Welcome to the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast, where timeless biblical truths meet modern leadership. We are thrilled to have you join us on this journey of exploring how biblical principles can guide us in leading with wisdom, integrity, and purpose. Whether you're leading in the church, your workplace, or your community, this podcast is designed to inspire, challenge, and equip you for the road ahead. Let's dive into today's conversation and discover how Scripture shapes the way we lead.
Welcome back to Biblical Perspectives for Leadership.
It's great to be back diving into this.
Yeah, so I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine deliberately steering your multi-million-dollar company into a corner with absolutely no obvious exit strategy.
Just completely boxed in.
Right, totally boxed in. And all while your most aggressive competitor is closing in fast from behind.
That's like a nightmare.
Exactly. I mean, to your board of directors, your shareholders, even your own team, it just looks like corporate suicide. You look totally incompetent.
Yeah, you'd totally be fired by the end of the week.
Oh, absolutely. But what if it isn't a mistake at all? What if it is a carefully engineered trap?
That changes the whole dynamic.
It really does.
Oh.
And today we have a very specific mission for this deep dive. The theme is transforming opposition into opportunity. And I want to set the parameters right out of the gate for you, the listener.
Which is super important for this particular topic.
Yeah, because this is a study on leadership principles, absolutely, but it is equally a study on your everyday life.
It applies everywhere.
Exactly. Whether you are leading a massive organization, managing a highly volatile startup team, or, just trying to guide your own family through an intensely difficult season, the dynamics of opposition are universal.
They really are. And to explore this, we are digging into a really fascinating piece of source material today. We are examining the story found in the book of Exodus.
Which is a classic, but we're looking at it a bit differently today.
Right. Usually when people encounter this story, their minds go straight to the cinematic moments, right? The grand miracles, the parted waters, all of that.
The Hollywood version, basically.
Exactly, the Hollywood visuals. But if we put those aside and actually analyze the text, what we have is a rigorous masterclass for leaders. It's for anyone facing overwhelming odds, closed doors, or just aggressively hostile competition.
It really is.
It's a brilliant, counterintuitive case study in crisis management, strategic mindset, and the psychology of constraint.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the beginning, because the strategic setup we find in the material is just wild.
It really makes no sense on paper.
None at all. If we look directly at the material in Exodus chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, God tells Moses to lead Israel to camp right by the sea.
Right.
And they follow the instructions perfectly, and suddenly they're entirely boxed in. I mean,
Yeah.
They have mountains surrounding them on either side, the Red Sea directly in front of them, and Pharaoh's hostile army closing in from the rear.
It's the ultimate bottleneck.
Yeah. To any human leader evaluating that terrain, this looks like a shocking, completely illogical strategy.
It absolutely defies conventional logic. I mean, when you analyze Exodus chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, the initial setup is just a logistical nightmare.
A total disaster waiting to happen.
Exactly. From a purely human tactical perspective, this positioning is disastrous. But the theological and the leadership insight buried in the material is that God's guidance is not always comfortable, though it is always purposeful.
I like that. Not comfortable, but purposeful.
Right. Divine direction does not always align with human logic or, a neat whisk-averse quarterly projection. The people of Israel were not lost in this moment. They were being intentionally led into a bottleneck.
Which is so hard to swallow when you're the one in the bottleneck.
Oh, for sure. But what looked to the naked eye like a devastating setback was actually the precise setup for a massive comeback.
Wait, hold on. I need to push back on that a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because if I am a CEO and I deliberately steer my company into a highly saturated market with no capital runaway and no exit strategy, my board is going to fire me.
Without a doubt.
Right. And to my team, it looks like I have completely lost my mind and engineered our collective failure. So how does a leader justify walking their people into a bottleneck like that?
Well, it is a massive risk if you were doing it blindly, but we have to look at the mechanism of constraint here.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
In business, and really in life, a leader will sometimes recognize that an environment of extreme restriction is the only way to force innovation or, to force an opponent's hand.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the material is teaching us that difficult places do not inherently mean you missed the mark. They do not mean you took a wrong turn or that your leadership is fundamentally failing.
That's a huge relief for a lot of people, I think.
It should be, because sometimes those highly restricted, high-pressure environments are exactly the conditions required for true strength or true deliverance to be revealed. The box itself is the design for the season.
Wow. That translates so directly to everyday life for you listening right now.
It really does.
Think about it. You might be looking at incredibly tight finances, a highly uncertain job market, or, a really heavy, immovable family situation.
Staring at closed doors everywhere.
Exactly. You are staring at closed doors and feeling like you are trapped in a dead end. And we have this deep-seated tendency to view any resistance or lack of options as a penalty for a bad decision.
Yes, our brains immediately assume constraint equals punishment. It's just how we're wired.
Right, like we did something wrong to end up here.
But the practical takeaway from the story is that hard places are so often preparation. When the pressure hits, a leader's cognitive bandwidth usually narrows. We get tunnel vision.
We totally panic.
Exactly, we panic. The instruction from the material is to interrupt that biological panic response. Before you panic, pray. Ask what is actually being taught in this specific bottleneck.
That reframes everything.
It does.
Okay.
There's a quote from the source material that sums this up beautifully. It says, "Just because you are boxed in does not mean God has backed out."
Just because you are boxed in does not mean God has backed out.
I love that.
But being boxed in strategically is really only half the problem.
Right, there's the other side of the equation.
Yeah, because you can theoretically manage your own team's internal anxiety when you are sitting in a tight spot. But what happens when the threat isn't just a bad position on the map?
When it's an active threat.
Exactly. What happens when an active competitor starts breathing down your neck? Because Pharaoh doesn't just let them sit by the water. He actively moves in for the kill.
He sees an opportunity.
And this brings us to the dynamic of pursuit in Exodus chapter 14, verses 4 through 9. Pharaoh sees their location, he calculates their vulnerability, and he pursues them.
And looking closely at Exodus chapter 14, verses 4 through 9, the text reveals the fatal flaw in the enemy's logic.
Which is what?
Well, Pharaoh pursues Israel thinking he is chasing down a highly vulnerable, cornered, and defenseless group of people. He reads the map, senses weakness, and overextends his forces.
He takes the bait.
He totally takes the bait. In reality, Pharaoh is walking directly into a divine appointment. The sovereignty at play here proves that while opposition or evil is highly active, it is never ultimate.
That's a great distinction. Active, but not ultimate.
Exactly. Pharaoh possessed immense military power, but God possessed the final word. The enemy's aggressive pursuit was the very mechanism being used to stage the ultimate victory.
So wait, you're saying the pursuit is the trap?
Pretty much, yeah.
That sounds incredibly reckless, honestly. I mean, if I'm a leader, I'm trying to mitigate risk, not deliberately let a hostile competitor back my team into a corner just to see what happens.
It does sound counterintuitive.
Yeah. Like, why not just defeat Pharaoh back in Egypt and walk out peacefully? Why go through this whole dramatic pursuit?
Because an enemy that is left unchallenged in the shadows will always dictate your movements. By allowing the pursuit, the opposition is forced out into the open where it can be decisively dealt with.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see that.
Apply this to everyday leadership. You have to ask yourself, what is chasing you right now? Is it deep-seated insecurity?
Or old destructive habits.
Right. Or is it a group of highly vocal critics actively trying to tear down your work? The profound lesson from the material is that those things are not actually there to defeat you.
Even though it feels like it.
Even though it feels terrifying, they are actually being permitted to reveal what has already been placed inside you. They are pressure tests for your resilience.
Okay, so the practical instruction for you, the listener, is to stop giving your enemy more credit than you give God.
Yes, exactly.
You need to name the pursuer, acknowledge the debt, acknowledge the critic, acknowledge the destructive habit. I mean, don't pretend it isn't chasing you.
You can't just ignore it.
Right. But once you name it, you have to declare who is greater than it. The source material gives us this really powerful thought. It says, what is chasing you may be the very thing God uses to prove he is keeping you.
Prove he is keeping you. That shifts the leader from a defensive, cowering posture into a stance of observant anticipation.
It changes the whole mindset.
It really does. You stop looking at the opposition as an executioner, and you start looking at it as an unwitting participant in your own breakthrough.
Wow.
It neutralizes the intimidation factor because you realize the opposition is actually walking into a trap meant for their defeat, not yours.
Okay, so the opposition is exposed, the threat is neutralized, the waters part, and physical freedom is achieved.
Big celebration, right?
Right. But as any seasoned leader knows, escaping an immediate physical threat doesn't instantly repair the damage done to a team's psychology.
Oh, definitely not.
You can relocate the company,
Yeah.
but you can't instantly relocate the culture. And reading the material in Exodus chapter 14, verses 5 through 8, there is this almost tragic detail about the human mind.
It's a very realistic detail, yeah.
It is. Israel physically came out of Egypt. Now Egypt was coming after them.
Yeah.
They were physically free, standing on the outside of their captivity, but their minds had not yet learned how to trust in the open wilderness.
The psychological component of Exodus chapter 14, verses 5 through 8 is just staggering. What we're looking at here is the stark difference between salvation, which is simple deliverance, or extraction from danger, and discipleship.
Which is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. Discipleship is the arduous process of learning to actually live delivered. The great leadership challenge in this narrative was that God successfully got Israel out of Egypt, but now he had the much harder, much longer task of getting Egypt out of Israel.
I want to break down how this actually works because this happens in our modern careers constantly.
All the time.
Let's say you finally leave a highly toxic workplace, the kind of environment where you are constantly micromanaged, criticized, and undervalued.
A total nightmare scenario.
Right. And you get a new job at a healthy company. But you carry all that defensive, nervous anxiety right into the new office.
You bring the baggage with you.
You do. Every time your new boss sends a completely normal email that just says, hey, can we chat later? But your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat, and you expect to be screamed at.
Your body is reacting to the old environment.
Exactly. You are physically in a better place, but mentally you are bracing for the trauma of the past.
Because the brain is a prediction machine. It prioritizes survival over logic. When you spend years in a restrictive, punishing environment, your personal Egypt, your nervous system downloads what I like to call survival software.
Survival software, I like that term.
Yeah, it learns to anticipate threats everywhere. So when you are suddenly placed in an open, free environment, your brain doesn't instantly delete that software.
It takes time.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
It takes 10 times longer to unlearn a defensive behavior than it takes to learn it. Your body has relocated to the wilderness, but your nervous system is still actively fighting the old war.
Which means, as a leader, or honestly just as a human trying to grow, when those old fears suddenly resurface, you cannot assume you are failing.
That's a huge point.
It is such a vital realization for you listening right now. If you feel panic in a safe place, it doesn't mean your freedom isn't real. It means your brain is just catching up to your geography.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it is the moment to use your prefrontal cortex, look at the situation, and literally say out loud, I am not who I used to be, and I am not going back.
You have to declare it.
You do. Because as the source material states, God does not just bring you out of something. He teaches you how to live beyond it.
And living beyond it requires intentional, repetitive practice. You have to build new neural pathways.
It's hard work.
It is. Because if a leader hasn't dealt with that lingering mental baggage, they will inadvertently project their trauma onto their team. They will create an environment where panic can easily take over, especially when real pressure arises.
Which it always does.
Always. And that panic almost always reaches a fever pitch right before a massive breakthrough.
And that collision of internal baggage and external pressure is exactly what happens next in the story. The boiling point hits in Exodus chapter 14, verse 10. The internal fear and the external reality violently collide.
You see the panic so clearly in Exodus chapter 14, verse 10. The Israelites look up, they see Pharaoh and his massive, highly organized army rapidly approaching, and they become utterly terrified.
They completely lose it.
They cry out, and, we have to validate that response. Their fear was entirely rational.
I mean, an army is an army.
Right. The physical threat bearing down on them was real, but the critical balancing factor that they failed to calculate was that God's presence was also real, and it was significantly more powerful.
It is genuinely amazing how short our memories can be under acute stress. I mean, think about the context here. A team can have a long, unbroken streak of incredible wins.
Massive wins.
Yeah. In the case of this story, Israel had just witnessed mind-bending plagues. They were protected during the Passover, they were miraculously delivered, and they walked out with the wealth of an entire nation.
A literal miracle.
But one looming threat on the horizon makes them completely forget their own testimony. Fear acts like a hyper-focused lens that magnifies the immediate threat and completely erases the historical track record of success.
It's crazy how that happens.
It really creates severe historical amnesia.
Which is a physiological reality. When acute stress hits, the amygdala hijacks the brain. You literally lose access to the logical, memory retrieval parts of your mind.
You just go into pure fight or flight.
Exactly. And this is where we have to redefine faith for leaders. Faith is not the absence of fear.
That's a huge misconception.
It's a toxic myth that crushes a lot of people. They think if their heart is racing and they feel terrified, well, they must lack faith. But faith is actually the mechanism of turning to God while the fear is actively pulsing in your chest.
Wow. Turning to God while you're afraid.
Yes. The Israelites were terrified, but they cried out. And that cry, born of sheer terror, became the doorway to divine intervention.
I really want to dig into that historical amnesia for a second, because in everyday life, fear doesn't just make you forget the good things. It will actively try to romanticize the past.
Oh, it loves to do that.
They'll try to romanticize your own Egypt while completely erasing your memory of the bondage and the misery it represented.
We wear rose-colored glasses when we look backward?
Exactly. Fear will whisper to you, hey, remember when you were that old toxic job? Sure, you cried in your car every day and your health was falling apart, but at least the paycheck was steady. The wilderness is too unpredictable. We should go back.
Such a dangerous trap.
It is. Fear prefers familiar misery over uncertain freedom.
Because familiar misery is predictable, and the brain loves predictability, even if it is painful. That is the ultimate trick of opposition.
It plays on our need for safety.
Exactly. It tries to convince you that the discomfort of growth is actually more dangerous than the prison of your past comfort. So what is the antidote to that?
Yeah, how do we fight that?
The remedy is structured memory. Memory must become medicine for your faith. When fear rises and cognitive bandwidth shrinks, you have to actively deploy your memory.
And practically, for you listening, that means you cannot rely on your feelings when the crisis hits.
Feelings will lie to you in a crisis.
100%, you need to write it down. In the corporate world, we call this an after-action review, or keeping a proof-of-concept ledger.
I love that, a proof-of-concept ledger.
Yeah, you need to meticulously document the evidence of what you have already been brought through. Keep a file of the impossible wins, the closed doors that surprisingly opened, the specific moments of provision.
You need the data.
Because when the volume of fear gets turned up to 10 and your brain is screaming at you to run back to Egypt, you need written, undeniable data to fight back. You engage your logic to quiet your panic.
Precisely. You have to cry out before you break down. Make prayer and the reviewing of that evidence your very first response, not the absolute last resort when the team is already falling apart.
It has to be the first line of defense.
Yes. As the material summarizes this dynamic so well, fear may be loud, but it does not have to be Lord.
That's so good.
It can be in the room. You can acknowledge its presence, but it does not get to sit at the head of the boardroom table and dictate the strategy.
That is so powerful. So let's pull all of these complex threads together. We've covered neurobiology, strategic constraint, and the psychology of deliverance.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have. So what are the core leadership principles you need to walk away with today? First, do not judge the overarching plan by how uncomfortable your current location feels. A bottleneck or a tight spot is very often a divine setup meant to expose your competition. Second, do not automatically assume that facing intense opposition means you have made a terrible misstep.
It might mean you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. Sometimes you are exactly where you're supposed to be, and the opposition is just walking into a trap meant to prove your resilience. Third, you have to institutionalize your memory. Keep that ledger. Let yesterday's documented deliverance fuel today's courage.
Memory as medicine.
Yes. And finally, never run back to the very thing you were brought out of, simply because the new path requires a level of faith you haven't mastered yet.
Those are robust anchoring principles. And as we conclude our analysis of this material, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to really process on your own.
Something to chew on.
Right. It builds directly on that dangerous psychological tendency we discussed, the habit of romanticizing our past when the present gets hard.
Okay, let's hear it.
I want you to ask yourself honestly, if fear tricks us into romanticizing our past bondage, What is a comfortable but severely limiting Egypt in your own life or career that you are fiercely defending right now simply because you are afraid of the wilderness required to reach your next level of leadership?
Wow. That is a question that requires some deep, uncomfortable honesty to answer. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the material today.
It was a pleasure.
We hope it equipped you with real frameworks, challenged your assumptions, and reminded you that even when you are boxed in, you are never without a way forward. Keep leading, keep stepping into the wilderness, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast. I hope today's insights have encouraged and equipped you to lead with faith, wisdom, and purpose. Remember, the greatest leader of all time taught us that true leadership is about serving others. If you enjoyed this episode and podcast, be sure to subscribe, share it with others, and leave a review. It helps us reach more people with these transformative truths. Until next time, keep leading with grace and walking in purpose.